Hello, hello, and welcome. This is Shoot the Moon, my late night live show here for Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll. This show is every Monday at this time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The sound is working. All right, so I will keep an eye on the chat. If you ever want to interject or throw something my way there in the chat, I will keep an eye out for it and do my best to respond. All right, let me get situated here. Today, the main topic is my top trick takers, with the caveat that has gotten them on that list. So as I play more games, some catch my attention, and some catches my attention enough to want to play it more, and then from there it might just make my top list. So if you were to look at my top 10 games, my top 10 trick-taking games a year ago, I honestly don't think I'd have 10, because they were either the ones that I absolutely loved. There's like a small group that I just played for years, like Hearts or Euchre, or they just weren't good enough for me to say, yeah, I really enjoy those. So let's get rolling on that. Window capture. Now first, let's go ahead and get to the news for the week, for my channel. Let me minimize this video and shrink. All right, the biggest news I would say that I want to start off with is that we launched Vidrasso. So if you're following along, you've seen the video for that game on the channel. This is a game designed by Sean Ross, the creator of Haggis, and he's been kind enough to allow me to publish it on Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll. A lot of his games can be found kind of word of mouth, but this one is one of my favorites. So you'll actually see this come up again later when I discuss our main topic. But the video is on my channel. Taylor over at Taylor's Trick Taking Table has a teach, but also more of a review if you want to kind of hear more about his thoughts on the game. And the game's available to play on playingcards.io. The room file is in the rule document that you can find at riffleshuffleandroll.com. Yeah. Hey, Michael. Michael's in the chat. Thanks for joining. Got some projects coming down the pipe, that some new games from me, and some that are a collaboration with Sean, or one at least, maybe some other games from Sean, and a couple other designers, which actually leaves me. Oh, and if you want to access the rules for Vidrasso, if you're a Board Game Geek member, you can just access the stuff there too. Leave a review. There's a forum on there for the game if you want any questions clarified about the rules. Feel free to do that there on Board Game Geek, or of course in the comments of the video here on YouTube. I can do my best to answer. So with all that in mind, actually, I can say that I have enough games lined up to have a bi-monthly release through all of 2022. All the way up through, games up through July are either done or almost done. And games beyond July are still in alpha, and they should be done by then. There's a couple that I know will be done by then, and then there's a couple that are questionable. But I am positive that 2022, even if it's not perfectly bi-monthly, we will have a ton of good releases for the site and for the channel. Original games that you can't necessarily find anywhere else. A couple of them you can already find on Board Game Geek. So that kind of leads me to what I want to discuss about the site anyways. What is it? So Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll the website, I am treating as a publishing model, but for games that can be played with supplies at home. Not quite print and play, not quite proprietary or commercial where you have to buy. The simplest games so far, all you need is a deck of cards and a pencil and paper. Cupid doesn't require but benefits from the use of a cribbage board. But again, it's just regular cards. There are a few cards with special powers, but you do not need to buy a special deck for that. There's only 4 cards with powers, and there's a reference card that you can print. In the future, there will be some games that require some printing, but not a lot. And that is the realm that I want to stick with as far as Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll original games. I don't, if I do anything that you can purchase, it's not going to be until 2023. Because frankly, that takes a lot of time. And I am a bit of a one-man operation when it comes to the channel and to the website. So I don't really want to put any effort into that. I've dabbled, and it can be a real time suck. And I just don't want to allocate my resources towards that quite yet. Because right now, this is still just a part-time thing. I take care of my daughter during the day. I spend time with my family in the evening, and in the late afternoon and evening when my wife is done with work. So that leaves a few hours here and there to work on this stuff and to sleep. So I'm excited for what the future might bring. But for now, this is a nice steady state or a nice steady pace that I'd like to stick with. And oh man, 2022 is going to be awesome. Now, let's jump over. If you look up, you notice the mission here. New games rooted in tradition. So I think that pretty much sums it up. I think there's still room for innovation using classic systems. And that means the standard 52 or whatever, 54 with the jokers. A Rook deck, which is different enough that I think there's still room for innovation there and what games can be created for that deck. The tarot deck and so on. You've got, and that's just cards. And something I've never really touched on is dice and checkers board, checkers pieces. How can all these traditional classical gaming systems be used to create new, innovative, and enjoyable experiences? And that's kind of the field I want to stay in, for now at least. I could see releasing small runs of tarot deck. Sean Ross. Sean's in the chat. Exactly. Yeah, tarot decks. I can see there's still room for innovation there as far as dominoes, dice, tarot decks, checkers boards, chess boards. You know, there's like foxes and geese. There's different chess variants as well. There is a game called Amazons that was, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't done a video for it yet. I really want to because it's such a simple game and it's really cool. But there is a game called Amazons. I think it was developed in the 60s or 70s. And it's a really simple kind of area control game that you just play with 6 checkers, 3 for each player. And then the amount of checkers you have on your side grows along with the size of the board. So you can use variable board sizes for that game. I need to get that on the channel. You can find the rules for it very easily on Wikipedia, and it's pretty easy to understand. But I'm going to put that on my to-do list and make that a priority because it is a really cool game. And it also fits what I really want to do with Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll. So, yeah, great things coming. 2022. Woo! All right, moving on. Let's look at the last to make sure. Yeah, okay. Oh, the other thing, one last thing. All of the games on Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll will be playable. Okay, I'm going to put it this way. I would like everything that's on Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll to be playable in playingcards.io. And that's not an ideal way to play a lot of games. And you have to have somebody else to play with in real life. Unless it's a solitaire game, then of course you don't. And that's sort of like Board Game Arena. You can't play with, there's no computer, there aren't any bots or anything. At least not for any of the games I've played. So you got to have people to play with, which is kind of a bummer, but it's also, I would say, easier to program that and to make that a platform for people. Because if you're programming bots, then that's a whole nother thing. And as you've seen, if you watch me play Hearts with Trickster, bots cheat anyway. So, yep. So we've got Vidrasso, we've got Cupid, we've got 9-9. These games are done and ready to be played online or in person. We've got videos for how to play. We've got printable instructions for all these games. Mad Jack is in development. I talked about this last week. The update for that is coming ASAP. I just got to peg Bram down long enough to get the document updated, and we'll have that out. What's been going on the last week? Had a nice get together with the in-laws. I had my first Thanksgiving celebration for the year. And we played some Uno. And it went pretty well. I think I lost every game. But there was something interesting that happened that made me think about what people do to try to make that game more fun and then end up ruining it. So we played where draw twos or draw fours can be stacked. Meaning if I play a draw two, the player to my right plays a draw two, the player to their right can play a draw two until somebody comes along and doesn't have a draw two or a draw four. Then the stack ends, and then that player draws all those cards. Now, in theory, that seems fun. It does add a level of excitement to the game. And it makes you think twice about playing a draw two, especially if you don't have any more in your hand and everybody else has a lot of cards already. There's a good chance that everybody will have a draw of some kind, and it's going to come back to you and bite you. Now, the Uno app takes care of that problem. Oh, and it also breaks the game because it's also bad for the game because whoever ends up having to draw a lot, it stacks their hand, giving them more cards to make other people draw. And in my experience with that rule, it slows the game down rather than speeds it up. Because when you're forcing that person to, let's say, draw 8, you are giving them more ammunition to make other players draw cards, which again slows the game down. And that's not the point of Uno. It should go fast. All the rules in Uno help that game go fast. The only rule that's in the modern take on that game is the challenge, the draw 4 challenge rule, which allows a person to challenge the player beside them who's trying to force them to draw 4, thinking that they actually have a card they could have played instead. And I like that rule because there is a penalty for being wrong, so you don't just challenge all willy-nilly. And it does make a player think twice about playing that draw 4 in a mean way. So that's a cool rule fix. Now, the app takes care of the stacking problem in one of their versions where you can stack draw 2 on draw 2. And then once you stack to a draw 4, you cannot stack another draw 2 on that. It has to be another draw 4 or nothing. And the way that the game balances that out is they have a card that allows you to play all cards of one color. So even though, I'll get to another one here in a second that it breaks. But even if you do end up stacking your hand, or if everybody starts to get real fat hands, there are cards in the deck that allow you to lay all of that color. And it's an either or. So you either lay one red card or you play your play all red card, and then all your red cards go down as well. And that means any action cards aren't activated. So even though your hand is stacked with a bunch of draw 2s or reverses or skips, you're not going to end up playing them because you are able to get rid of all the red cards. And that's something that can really, that's a cool rule. I think that, I wish that was part of the actual game. But those kind of things are just a little harder to monitor, and then making the app doing all the work just makes it super easy. So this whole thing kind of inspired and it made me realize I don't have a how to play Uno yet for the channel. And so I'm going to get that done, and it's going to be how to play it correctly by the rules. And then I'm also going to talk about a few house rules that actually make the game better. I guess I kind of spoiled some of it here, but I'll also make a video for house rules that make the game better, and also include some rules that break it. One of them being the draw until you get something to play. That's a game breaker. All right, so enough of that. What else have I played? That was all we played over there. Played some more, let me pull this up here. Push. Played some more Push actually today during dinner with the wife. This game is so cool. 6.9 on Board Game Geek, and I give it a 7. Right? It's I'll play it if I'm in the mood, I believe is the... No, good. Usually willing to play. Good. Yeah. 6 is one less. So yeah, and I think a 7 describes it perfectly. It's good, and I'm usually willing to play it, and that's where I'm at right now. And I've only played it with 2, and it's fun. It's really fun. And it's so simple. All you're doing is drawing a card. Add it to a column. You can have no more than 3 columns on your turn. Draw a card. Add it to a column. If a card is the same color or number as a card in the column, you can't put it there, and you have to put it in a different column. And then if you draw a card that can't be placed in any column, you busted, you went too far, you're not going to get any points. So if you end your turn in time, you get to choose one column and add those cards to what's called essentially your tableau, but it's called a bench. And you're going to earn points for cards in your bench. Now there's a mechanism in the game where you can lose the cards that are in your bench, all cards of a single color, and you can see it in the picture here, the card with the colored die. So if you bust, or if you choose a column with one of those cards in it, you have to roll that die, and whatever color it shows up on, you have to remove all those cards from your bench. You don't have to take anything that you've banked. Those are cards that have been collected and turned face down. Those are safe. So you can actually, if you're willing or able or lucky enough, you can actually set up 2 out of the 3 columns to have those dice cards, the roll cards. And then you collect the safe column, add it to your bench. And then what happens after you pick one, going around the table, the next person picks one, and then the next person picks one. So you are essentially forcing them to roll the die. And I squeaked out a victory over my wife, 107 to 97. And I guarantee it was purely because I stacked the layout twice against her and forced her to roll the die and ditch some cards. Now what's cool is there's a little bit of variability in difficulty here, because you can, or not difficulty, but how harsh the game can be. Because if you roll a die and it comes up black on that black star, normally it just means you're safe. You don't have to get rid of anything. But if you want to play the more devastating rules, you say when you roll the black star, you get rid of your entire bench, which means 2 things. First, it means players are going to be banking their cards more often. And when you do that, that's all you can do on your turn. So cards aren't being played. The second thing that means is I think it's going to slow the game down. So we haven't played that way yet, but I can't see how it won't slow the game down, because players are going to want to bank their cards instead of playing cards more often to add to their bench. It's a super simple game. There's enough to it. So if you look at it like as a seesaw, it's so simple that there's not enough, but it's interesting enough where it balances out nicely, right? It's not too simple and it's not too complex. There's not too many little fiddly rules or anything. It's just a really nice balance. So yeah, at this point, it's a 7 from me. It might go up if I get to play it with a larger group, which I've got some more family gatherings coming. So I want to bust it out then, and we'll see how it goes. Ooh. There's also a card that can be drawn that reverses the order that people get to choose. So you can really hose your opponents by reversing the card choice order, which keeps players on your left from picking, and then stacking columns with those the roll cards. You're just hosing everybody. So it's pretty cool. I haven't done a video for it yet. It's coming, but I can say right here, this is definitely, you need to get it. I think it was $10 or less. I picked it up at Kohl's. Go for it and get it. All right, what else? Final game I played. No, not the final game, but the final finished game that I played for the week is this guy right here. Just got this play in today. It was very spur of the moment. I guess this is a really, really hard game to find, but it's pretty easy to replicate. And it's okay. I give it a 5. Take it or leave it. If I'm with a group of people who, kind of like what happened tonight, there was a couple people who had played it, and there was a few people that had not, so we gave it a go. And it was okay. But so instead of a deck of cards, the entire game is played with dice, and there are 10 dice per color. There are 4 colors. Purple's always trump. And then you draw, the dice are all put in a bag. You draw the dice to form your hand, and your hand is hidden behind like a screen. And then you play the number die to the trick, and the highest number wins the trick. But you don't know what the number distribution is. You know how many colored dice there are, but you don't know what numbers are out there because it's a roll. So there could be 4 6s. You just don't know. There could be 4 green 6s, and you just don't know. So other than color, there's no way to really track what numbers have been played, and so there's not really a lot to it. It's kind of like you're throwing out dice, you're throwing a die into the trick, and you're just kind of hoping. And it just felt very gambly. I don't know. It's not a game that I always talk about that luck to skill scale, and I feel like this one goes too far to the luck side of it. The fact that you roll your hand just makes it too random for my taste. So that was Dados. Okay, now as far as what else I've been playing, there's been some play testing. Oh, that lags real bad. Better stay small. There we go. There's been some play testing going on behind the scenes for 2 games that are coming out next year. One from me and one that is kind of a little cooperation between Sean, Ross, and I. Both I'm very excited for, and I can't wait to give them to you, to present them. So that is coming. So essentially, one other thing I wanted to touch on was, let me check my notes real quick. Okay, so as far as my game goes, the game that's kind of a collaboration between Sean and I, between me and Sean, that really it's going to come down to him when he feels like the game is done. Which I love how it came together because it was very, very spur of the moment. He has created a couple other games, and he kind of put forth an idea. He put forth a rough draft of a game, and I was like, well, what about if I take this and I take this and we do this, and let's throw all this together and just see what comes out of it. And so it's like I went into his kitchen and just started throwing ingredients in a pot, or throwing his ingredients into a pot, and just made some soup, But I'm excited. I'm excited for that one. And but as far as the one that I'm working on, that is coming out of alpha here this month, and I'm going to be ready to start showing it to more playtesters and putting it out there for people to play. Where I have the main idea of the game down and locked in. The main mechanisms and features are locked in, but I'm still open. I need more plays, essentially. Once it's out of alpha for me, that means to me, I need more plays, and I need to see if there are any hidden problems. Yeah, that's right, Sean. Making hot dogs. But yeah, for me, when it comes out of alpha, it's ready to be broken. I want the game to get broken by players. I need it to be played enough to where we can see, like, oh, this sort of scoring trend always happens, or the person with these cards always seems to win, or a person can never come back from being behind. That kind of thing. Yeah. So that's all coming. Very cool. 9-9. I wanted to talk about 9-9 in regards to all that. 9-9 happened very quick. It was it was kind of spurred on. I was playing a lot of hearts at the time and a lot of euchre. And I wanted a game that sort of combined those two things. And I wanted a game that was for 3 players. And I think the design and development process for 9-9 all went super smoothly. And the game came together really quick. But with every game that I do myself, I learn a lesson. With Cupid, that game got all the time it needed. That part was awesome. And even though it still only took a few months, maybe I think 4 to get completely done, Bram and I were playing that 3 or 4 times a week because that was just what we did. So even though it only took a few months, the first couple months of that game was a ton of plays, at least twice a week on average. So, and then we'd sit there and play it over and over and over. It only takes about 20 minutes for a complete round. So, I mean, we would throw out 4 or 5 rounds every night. And it allowed for that game to really breathe. Now, the lesson I learned from that game is do not assign a theme too soon. With that game, the theme kind of helped spur on the development. I was able to work within the story of Cupid and Anima to develop the game. But now, having sat back from that game for a while, I recognize that the scoring mechanism for that game, it's a race. The game is a race. The first person to cross the finish line wins. And I think I missed out on a really good opportunity to make it a racing game and a racing themed. I like the Cupid theme. I think it's really cool. And it all fits wonderfully. But if I had to criticize the game for one thing, it is that the game, the theme, and how you win, like the meta, like you are the character moving your peg on a board. Those two things, or you are the player moving your peg on the board. Those two things don't really marry. They don't marry well. And I think a racing theme assigned to that game would have been perfect, So with 9-9, I think I wanted to remain themeless. I wanted the game to be as abstract as possible. And I added elements, I added flavor with the skull deck and the mischievous, deadly looking skeleton running across the logo. So I like the flavor, and I think the flavor fit the game. But I wish I would have given the game more time before releasing. So with that in mind, there's still some stuff that I want to do with 9.9, and it's not gonna dramatically change the game. It's going to add to the game, and it will give players that want it a different sort of experience that's still very well grounded in what 9.9 is. And of course, it's optional, so you don't have to play like this. And as much as I want Riffle and Shuffle Rolls releases and Riffle, Shuffle, and Roll itself to be modeled after publishing company and to be looked at in that way, I think what I have planned in mind and in mind for 9.9 can just be considered an expansion, which is it's comical because you play it with regular cards. So it's interesting, but it's the way I want to frame it. So what I have planned for 9.9 will be seen as an expansion. You can play with it if you want. If you like the game the way it is, just super mean and super quick, then go for it. Yeah, that's right, Sean. Knizia redevelops games all the time. The cool thing about our model is it doesn't cost anything. All we got to do is update the doc and let people know. So I think that's definitely one of the perks. You guys, get yourself a deck of cards and get yourself the basics. Get a cribbage board. Get a tarot deck if you can get your hands on one. I bought my French suited Fournier tarot deck, which I still think is the best looking tarot deck, Michael. Get yourself one of those. I got mine off Amazon. I got lucky. I haven't seen them on there since, but they're pretty easy to find on eBay. And yeah, get yourself these basics so you're set up to play hundreds of games, and don't rely on shipping. Don't rely on Kickstarters, or don't rely on companies taking your money and getting you something way down the road, or having a boat stuck along the shoreline or anything like that. Get yourself set up with these inexpensive systems that can be adapted to an endless amount of gaming experiences. And I have not been exposed to a lot of commercial card games, not compared to some of the people that I play games with. But I am still not convinced that I could live my life ignorant of the commercial world and not be happy. I am not convinced that I need to be aware of what games are available commercially to have a good time and really have a full gaming life, if you want to put it that way. I think there's plenty of things to play and plenty of ways to play games that are inexpensive. Kind of a utilitarian look, Think of it as a toolbox. Get the tools you need to play a nice variety of games and you're set. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the main topic, where I am going to show you my top trick takers. Some of these, if you follow the channel, aren't going to be a real big surprise, but I get to elaborate more on those games and say why they're on my top list. Because it's funny, I am getting sucked into the geek list creation tornado here, because I keep thinking of new criteria, and I'm like, oh, that would make a great list on its own. Like, here's how I categorize these games. And, but this is how I want to categorize this list, and that would have these games on it. And it's happening. I don't want it to, but it's happening. So I've got it limited to top card game, or my play anytime, anywhere games, which I think is a nice encompassing list of these are the games that I am most excited about and want to play anytime and anywhere. This is my top trick taker list, and it's at 10, and I'm going to keep it at 10. I'm on the record of saying it's going to stay at 10, so games will have to go. And especially as I learn more games that can kind of fill different niches. So here's where I start to elaborate on why certain things are on the list. So first, we got Pinocchio here. Pinocchio is, again, a game I can't play in real life yet, but you can play it on Trickster, and it is a lot of fun. It's got a really nice kind of gambling element to it in the beginning, because the first thing you're going to score are the melds that are in your hand, just kind of like rummy, but there are some special melds for Pinocchio. And you're going to bid first. So you're going to bid based on not only on the cards in your hand, but if you win the bid, you're going to get cards from your partner. You're going to trade them some cards. So not only are you going to bid based on what you already have in your hand, but you get to project a little bit. You get to bid based on what you would like to have from your partner in the exchange. So then you can start to see, okay, this is how far I want to push it. So what I've been doing is, because Trickster tells you what your meld points are if a certain suit is picked. So if hearts is picked, you have 80 points in melds. What I like to do is, and I'm very aggressive at bidding, and I haven't played long enough to really realize that it doesn't work, but I take my meld score points for my best meld set. Like if hearts is 80 and that's the highest, then I take that and then I say, okay, 200 added on to that, 280. That's my max comfortable bid. And you have to take, I think, shoot, I can't remember off the top of my head. If there's 250 points within the tricks, that's the minimum. So you have to be able to take that many. Right? Right. So, based just on the melds, you would take the two, if you got every single trick during the round, you would get 250 points. I think, if someone can correct me in the chat. So like hypothetically, you could say, with this hand, if my partner gives me trump, I'm going to take 200 points worth of cards during the round, plus my 80 points for the melds in my hand. I think that's pretty reasonable, especially if you're already set up with a couple aces, some kings, And then from there, you can get real aggressive and say, my gut says my partner is going to send me some good cards in the exchange. I think I'll have 110 points in melds. So now your bid becomes 310. That's my max. So then I start to have my uncomfortable max bid where I'm leaning on my partner. And then if you're playing with real people, there's also the element of pushing their limit. So like you bid 310, they bid 320. My partner passes. Their partner passes. Now I decide, do I try to push them to 340? Even though I know I'm probably not going to make my bid by doing so. And that's part of the fun. Am I going to bully my opponent into overbidding? Or at least making it really, really hard for them to get their bid? And it can be spectacular. Or it can blow up in your face. Because if I say 330 and they pass, now I'm stuck with a 330 bid with a hand that might get 310 if, So, but that's why Pinocchio's awesome. And not to mention all the different variants and ways you can play. You want to play 2-player, the original, the classic, which I've never done. I think it's a little different. I don't think you make melds before you play, but I could be mistaken. You can play with 3 players. You can play with a kitty. There are all kinds of rules. I think there's like 20 different rule options on Trickster. So that is why it is one of my top trick takers. It is not number 1 on the list. This list has no meaning rank-wise. Number 2, I've talked about it quite a bit. German whist. And I say, going to be ruffling some feathers, but I'll play this over Schnapsen or 66 any day. Yeah, that's right, Michael. 2-player, Two-player Pinocchio is the way to go. I believe Michael's going to have some words about German Whist over Schnapsen. But now Schnapsen is a great game. 66 is a good game. And if I have to play on VIP games, I'm going to play 66 because it's French suited. The Donkey Cat app for Schnapsen is excellent, and you can use whatever cards you want to use. That's right. Michael disagrees. And I guarantee you most people who are familiar with both games would disagree with me. They would say that Schnapsen is a superior game. And it's hard to argue. Now, but this is my top list, and I prefer German Whist. And even more so, Small Whist, which is 28 cards. BSN is in the chat. Welcome, BSN. German Whist is Pibblebit. I don't know what that means. So German Whist, it's simple. It's a quick game you can play with two. There's no tracking of points or cards. I mean, well, there is. Let me rephrase that. Woo! The reason I like Small Whist better than German is because it's only 28 cards. You're tracking literally half as many cards. The first phase of German Whist is a draft. It's just a draft. You're trying to build a hand that will dominate the second phase of the game, because those are the tricks that matter. Now, there are some variants. Is how you spell the raspberry. That makes sense. German Whist is... But, so yeah, the second phase is what matters. Now, there are some variants where you can play where all the tricks are points, but that's silly. I don't know why you would do that. German Whist is easy to teach. There's only a trump suit, or that's the only special thing. It's must follow. Play anything if you can't follow. And bonus points to German Whist because, especially Small Whist, because my wife really liked it. She really liked it. Which is a perk because she doesn't like trick takers, generally. Up next is Skull King. Now, in my Play Anytime Anywhere list, I've got Oh Heck on there. And that's perfect for that list. There's tons of ways to play that game, and it's very versatile. But if I had to pick between it and Skull King, it's Skull King all the way. It's Skull King all the way. $15. The box is packed to the brim. Let him like his things, Michael. Skull King, the box is packed to the brim. If you buy a copy of this game now, you will get the expansions, which comes with the Kraken and the White Whale and the loot coins. Haven't played with that, and honestly, we didn't even play with the full scoring, and the rule book is thick. They offer tons of different ways to play based on the kind of game you want. It is just as versatile as Oh Heck, but it's got an amazing theme. It's fun. The cards are awesome. The artwork is beautiful, and it adds ranks. It adds tiers to the card system that you can't get with Oh Heck. I mean, you might be able to finagle it with a Sharpie marker, but you're just not going to get the same type of experience with a deck of cards. So here's one of the rarer occasions where I say, play Skull King. Wizard is there, but this is more than Wizard. I've only played Wizard once or twice. My cousin who plays Wizard frequently or regularly, because I think that's what his in-laws like to play, he said the scoring for... There are some scoring elements that are similar between Wizard and Skull King, but Skull King is a lot different in many ways. And just a quick rundown, just to maybe get you familiar with. That's right. If the wife likes it, it's always a plus. Yeah, got to find those games you both can enjoy. There's no sense in one of you being miserable while you're playing. But Skull King has a 4-suited base deck. 1 suit is permanently trump. That's easy enough to kind of recreate with a homebrew, but the deck goes up to 14, which is a little different. Above the base deck in the trump suit are the pirates. Oh man, I might be forgetting. There are pirates who always beat the trump. And then there are mermaids that... Oh wait, no, it goes mermaids, pirates, and then the Skull King. So the pirates beat the mermaids, and then the mermaids beat the Skull King. And then there are also the boats. There are escape cards that allow you, that are always low. So, and obviously with all the different cards you add to the Skull King deck, there are going to be a lot of interesting or ridiculous trick builds where you have to look at the rules. Like, everybody's played an escape boat, so who loses the trick or who wins the trick? What happens if you play a mermaid and a Skull King and a pirate? There's one pirate that also acts as an escape, the Tigress. It's so cool. This is, in my opinion, the best way to play. Possibly. You might be able to you could build the base deck with a Rook deck for sure. But then you gotta factor in the ships, the mermaids, the pirates, and the Skull King. And then with the expansion, the Kraken, and the White Whale. And again, that's a whole new kind of rock, paper, scissors relationship that forms between like the Skull King and the Kraken and the White Whale and the pirates. And Michael, I think your group would like it, but it's going to take, I think it'll take many sessions to love it. My cousins, we played it once and they want to keep playing, and that excites me because we only played with basic scoring. There's not only with based on the bid. We only scored based on the bid. You can also you earn points for capturing certain cards and capturing certain cards in certain ways. So if you capture 14s, the highest ranking cards of each suit, you get bonus points. So you can miss your bid. That I'm not sure. You know what? Let's check right now. No, I can't. I'm not logged in. Shoot. If Skull King's on Board Game Arena, I think it's premium. If I've seen it, I'm pretty sure it's premium. But yeah, we only played where we scored based on the bid. So pretty true to Oh Heck or Wizard. But you can earn extra points for capturing all the 14. You can earn points for capturing pirates with the Skull King. There's bonus points for doing something with the mermaids. So it's possible to miss your bid, but still come out net positive, or at least lighten the penalty scoring a little bit by capturing good cards. So that adds a whole nother level. And then, of course, there's different hand distributions you can do. You can go do the classic. This one, how does this go? I think there's a start up at 7, go down to 1. But you can have variable hand sizes. And then, of course, those are scored differently. All right, great game. It deserves to be on my top list. And the next one is kind of a shameless self-promotion. It's Cupid. But here's why. It's that racing element, what I talked about earlier. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, Skull. That element that I talked about earlier that just doesn't marry perfectly well with the theme. But it's 24 cards. It's a trick taker adjacent kind of game. You play cards to a trick, but the point of the trick is to move your peg on the cribbage board or to add points to your score. And it's a race to 121 or more. And I don't know of any other games like that. So I want that on the list because of that element. It's quick. One round, one game to 121 takes 20 minutes. And a full game if you play best of 3, can take, 45 to an hour, or best of 5, depending on how many you want to play. But that's definitely a system that I want to do more with. So even though I talk about how I know I talk about how I wish I could retheme this, but I think I would rather, if I were to make a racing game using a similar system, I think I would rather do it from the ground up, just so it can be a pure creation from the get-go. Yeah, it's oh heck. I keep it PG around here. Next is another shameless or shameful, depending on. Hey, I got a thumb. Somebody else thumbed up Gudetama. Thank you. Cucumber. I'm just referring to it as its own little family of games. There are enough variants depending on which country you played in. And it is a trick taker in a sense, but I think it's pretty unique in that it is the last trick that matters. And man, I might as well just say it. I'm working on a cucumber style game. I'm working on a last trick game. I'm putting, sprinkling my spice in and making it my own. And I think that's part of the fun in designing games. You take something you like. Oh, real quick, BSN, what did you think of Gudetama? Give me a quick thumbs up, thumbs down. But yeah, so I'm working on one, making it the game that I would want it to be. In the meantime, Gudetama is on my list because I think it is the best way to play a last trick game. Again, this stupid game is $15 and you just get a deck of cards. And that makes me so mad. And the theme is questionable at best. Indifferent. Now, honestly, that doesn't hurt my feelings because I know the last trick family of games, that's how a lot of people who play games more seriously respond to it. Because really, I mean, you're building up, the tension in that game is building up to the last trick. So actually, my wife made me she reframed how I think about this game. Because when you play cards to a trick, the trick winner, they win the trick. But in a last trick game, the cards are just discarded. So that kind of threw my wife off because she says, why are you saying I win the trick if I don't get to keep it? And really, that's not what the game's about. It's about, first of all, if you want, winning the lead for the next trick. Because in that particular game, you want to be in the position of lead or second from lead. You want to be the player on the left. You want to be in as early as possible in the trick. So that way you have more control over what card you play. Because the point of the game is, it's kind of like an anti-hand building game. Because you're trying to get your last card to be the best card for the trick. Now, with Gudetama, the 14s have a power that if you win a trick with a 14, you have to choose someone else to lead. So that balances the power of the highest ranking card. You would win the trick, and normally if you win the trick, you lead. But with that, you have to pick someone else. And then the ones, when played to the final trick, when a 1 is played, everybody scores. Okay, well, that's fair. But I think with games I think with games in general, you kind of know. You might not be able to give a full review, but you kind of know. Like if you're left hankering, like I want to revisit this game, then you're going to come back to it, and that pretty much speaks for itself. But if you're like, I don't know when we're going to play this again, we should, but I think that pretty much speaks for itself. But yeah, with Gudetama, the 1's power is if it's played to the final trick, then everybody scores. So it's kind of a deterrent. I mean, you're still earning a point, but now everybody scores instead of the person who won the last trick. And I think that's that combined with the deck distribution of Gudetama, that game was play tested. The deck's been balanced. Not every suit has the same number of cards in it. I can't imagine the process they went through to figure out, like, okay, we need this many 8s because this many was too few and this many was too much. Or too many. This many was too many. But anyways, Gudetama, unfortunately, it is $15. Maybe you can find it for $10.99 or so on Amazon. They've got a Christmas edition that's out if you want to have a Christmas-themed weirdo egg deck of cards. You can pick that up. And I'll say it here. I think my cousin summed up the game perfectly. He said the game is fun. The cards are weird. Or the cards are stupid. One or the other. I can't remember. But he summed it up pretty well. I want Gudetama, and I say it here, I want Gudetama reprinted as a $6 colors and number game. I know that's not going to happen with Renegade Games doing it. But I think Gudetama, or at least some sort of last trick game, would sit on the shelf perfectly right beside Rook, Uno, Monopoly Bid, Monopoly Deal, Phase 10, Skippo. Perfectly. Just not this theme and not that price point. Yeah, the Christmas themed Gudetama is a stretch, BSN. I don't know what they're thinking. But it must have sold well enough. Now, Gudetama is a really popular anime. So they've probably made sales based on the IP alone. People probably didn't care what the game was. All right, up next, Bid Euchre. Turnup's the way to play online. Turnup's what everybody knows. If they know Euchre, they know Turnup. I played Turnup all through high school, and then somewhere there in my early 20s, a small group within the group started playing Bid. I'm not sure where it came from. I'm not sure how it got injected into the group. But Bid is better. It's different, and I'm sure, and people who love Turnup will not think it's better, and that's fine. Here's why I picked Bid and put it on this list over Turnup. First, you're dealt, the entire deck is dealt, all 24 cards. Each player has 6 cards. Bidding is based on how many tricks you think you can take. If you win the bid with a minimum bid of 3, if you win the bid, you determine trump. So it's if you pass, you're done. You don't come back in and bid. Michael's grimacing, and I'm not sure if it's because of, we've got a lot of things to grimace about here. It could be Gudetama. It could be my comments on Bid Euchre. I don't know. But I like Bid Euchre better because of the full deck being dealt, and there's more control over determining trump. And I like the scoring system better because you are truly awarded for what you've accomplished. And if you overbid and fail, you are set back. So the bidding starts at 3, depends on how many, and it is determined by how many tricks you think your team can take. It goes 3, 4, 5. If a player thinks they can take all the tricks, there are 2 ways to bid that. You either ask for help, so you would show that when it gets to you. If you want to ask, you would just take 1 card and put it face down out at your opponent. And that means you're going for 6, you're taking them all, you're going to play alone, and you want your partner's best card. You can name the trump suit. If no one overbids you, you say, give me your best hearts. Your partner gives you their best hearts or something else that's good, like another ace. And then they sit out, you play alone. It's 1v2, and you have to take all the tricks. Doing that, you get 12 points. If you fail, you get negative 12 points. And the other way to bid 6 and overbid the ask is to go alone. You would just say, well, we called it shoot the moon. I don't think that's really euchre, a real euchre term. We just say we're shooting. So you'd say I'm shooting and say the suit. and then that ends at 1v2. That is worth 24 points. And again, if you fail, you go back 24 points. So there you lose a little bit of the elegance in the scoring that you have in Turnip, because in Turnip you can just score the game using fives from, 2 5s or a 6 and a 4, whatever, 2 numbers that add up to 10. But it allows for players to the bid euchre scoring system. A player can fall behind. They can go for it. They can push a little harder, maybe go alone when they shouldn't, and still have an opportunity to come back. And I think that's pretty cool. Whereas, and then the other team doesn't score any points. So they only score points for the tricks they take. So again, with Turnip, if you set your opponents, you're gonna earn whatever, 2 or 3, I can't remember. However, here, if you set your opponents, their score goes back, and you only earn a point for each trick you took. So if they bid 6 and you take 2, you get 2 points, and they lose 24 or 32. I think that's a cool dynamic. I think this game actually used to be called Auction Whist. Or not Auction Whist, I'm so sorry. Auction Euchre. But I think the term auction implies that bidding would continue around until everybody passes. And that's not how we played. So yeah, there's no way to play bid online that I have found yet. Nothing that looks like it's been made in the 21st century at least. I don't know why. I guess this game is also adjacent to but better than Pepper or Haas and Pfeffer. The setup for those games are similar in that they use all 24 cards, but the bidding and the scoring are different. And I enjoy Haas and Pfeffer because of the name. Haas and Pfeffer is rabbit stew. It's a German rabbit stew. Moving on. Another partnership game, Suica. Suica accomplishes what bid euchre can't, or what euchre in general can't. Suica is a point trick game, and this is my point trick game of choice right now. That's for more than 2 players, and I'm just really hooked on this game right now. It's super simple. It's easy to learn. You can play with standard deck of cards. It's a Portuguese game, so there are some traditional differences that you can play that don't really affect the outcome of the game, such as playing counterclockwise instead of clockwise, reversing the queen and the jack. But really, it's just a point trick game where you're trying to take the majority of points, similar to Schnapsen, and you're doing it as a partnership. One of the cool little features of the game is you deal yourself. If you're the dealer, you deal yourself the first card, and that card is face up for everyone to see, and it sets trump. So you communicate to your partner, okay, this is trump, and I have this one, but you also let your opponents know. Kind of an interesting little piece of shared information. I would rather teach this to people than euchre, especially if they're just getting into trick taking. But depending on the climate of the group, I would say, or the experience levels of the group, it would either be OHEC or Suica if I had to teach a trick taker to a group. If it's not 4, I'm not going to teach Suica. But if it's a group of 4 with varying degrees of experience, I would probably I'd have to pick between OHEC and Suica. You've seen this game in action. I've played it live a few times. You can watch the recordings on my channel if you want to see how it's played on VIP games. It scratches the right itch for a partnership point trick game. We've got Tragu, however you want to say it. This is a tarot game. It is one of 2 tarot games that I've played. It is the only traditional tarot game that I've played, and I love it. It is so simple. It makes good use of the deck. You're not going to just play this with any other cards. First of all, the tarot deck's 5 suits. That can be replicated. But the trump suit is 21 cards. Yes, Michael's happy. That's right. Tragu, man. I love this game. We're going to be playing it. I'm going to be playing it Wednesday night. And I am excited to get another game of this in. It accommodates different player counts. Your hands in this game, as I believe is true with most tarot games, your hands are huge. And the fewer players you have, the more cards you have in your hand. And that part was a huge, it was a big difference to me. Because the biggest hand I'd ever had was hearts, 13 cards. So I think in a 5-player game, you start off with 18 cards or 20 or something like that. I've played this at 5, and I think that's all I've played this at. And I think it's a great 5-player game. I had never played a tarot game or played with a tarot deck before playing this game. And it was pretty easy for me to pick up. How many times have I played this? 2 or 3 times. And the first time I played, I didn't do very well at all, but I knew what I should have done differently. It was very easy for me to identify where I screwed up. The one trump card has a special, I think it has a special thing where, it's got a special rule and I can't remember it off the top of my head. I know Michael could tell us in the chat. But Tragu is available it's on Board Game Geek, it's on Board Game Arena. It's an alpha, so you have to be part of the alpha group. But hopefully we can get that thing pushed through so it's available to everybody, because it really is a great game. The bidding is simple. You either, up to 5 players. The bidding is simple. You pick up the kitty or the tap, you pick that up, you exchange cards with it, and you believe you're going to take I don't remember what the point threshold is, but you believe you can take enough points to win the round. And it becomes, if you're playing with 5, I played the 21 before the full was played. If you play with 5, it becomes a 1 versus 4 game, which sounds impossible, but it's not. You can do it. You can win. 1 is small but worth points. 21 is large but worth points. 22 is the highest, except when it's not. Thank you, Michael. And that sums up the trump suit in a nutshell. I love it. If you don't think you can win the round, you pass. If everybody passes, it becomes a misère, as they say in Francois. I just say it's misery. But it can be misery for everybody. Because the point of the game is to take the fewest tricks. You do not want to take... I think the person who takes the most pays out to everybody else. I love it. I think I've only played a few games, and I'm pretty sure I won half. Yes, I'm pretty sure I won. I don't think I've lost a misère hand. I like that particular bid, or that when the game goes into that mode. I really like it, especially when I have a good hand for it. If you're sitting there with, and that's the cool thing, if you're sitting there with a middling hand and you don't have very many trump, or you don't have very good trump, and you're like sitting there with all 4 suits of the base deck and none of the numbers are good, and you're just like, I'm going to lose if we go to misère, but I'm not going to win if I pick it up. You got to make that tough choice. Moving on, we got Rook here. I like Rook for a lot of reasons. The game itself, the base game that comes nowadays with the Hasbro packaging, it's good. It's okay. There's enough going on that makes it really interesting. It's a point trick game, but only 3 of the cards in each suit are points. The Rook is the most valuable card, and it's the most powerful. There are a bunch of special rules that need to be followed when you play the Rook card, but here's the thing. The Rook card is optional. It's a lot like a Joker, even though the rules say to include it. When Rook first came out, the games did not include the Rook card. It was treated like a Joker. And in fact, the Rook deck was developed as a system, an alternative system to the 52 card deck. Especially for those, that's right, Kentucky Discard. especially those who were averse to playing with standard playing cards for whatever reasons. Because religious reasons, they didn't want to play with anything that was associated with gambling. They didn't want to play anything with faces on the card. So Rook was developed. George Parker and his wife, mostly his wife, they developed it as an answer to that solution, or a solution to that problem. And it took some time for it to pick up steam, but once it did, it became kind of a cultural thing. I think it's very, very popular amongst the Mennonite culture, if I'm not mistaken. It's played in the South, and it definitely has its place. And I think it's the proof is in the pudding when it sits on the shelf, when it's still published by Hasbro and it sits on the shelf for $6, and it's not that much more than a deck of cards. I mean, a cheap bicycle deck's $3, but you buy any bicycle deck that's loosely themed on something and it automatically jumps up to $4.99 or $5.99. So you've got yourself an affordable deck system to play a variety of different games. Certainly games that feel different enough to warrant the purchase of the deck. So for all those reasons, it's on my list of top trick takers. I got one more for you. Sean Ross's Vidrasso. This is my 100% choice for trick taker. This is my go-to trick taker, especially if the opponent has trick taking experience. If I have a newbie, I'm gonna play German whist, Michael. If this person has if this person has experience with trick takers, I am gonna show them Vidrasso. I think it is perfectly balanced between luck and skill. And each player will have control over part of the trump aspect. One player will pick the trump suit, and the opposite player will pick trump rank. And you get to see there's lots of shared information, because this game uses strawman. You can see the row of cards on the table. Those are cards that both players will be able to see. And you can see that there are face down cards underneath them. So you also have hidden information that both players don't know. There's plenty of unknown information. There's plenty of known information. And there's plenty of control over the trump. Yeah, that's right. Calling out Michael. There's plenty of control over the trump aspect of the game. It's a point game, and the ranking and the points are like kind of opposite of what you would think. So nines are low. Let me put it over here. Nines are low, and ones are high, but nines are worth 9 points. So that's a really clever way to make low ranking cards worth more points without needing a second number on the card. It's a very, very elegant solution to that sort of thing. Because I think what most designers, or what most people would think to do, is keep the classic ranking, but then have a secondary number on the card or a second piece of information, or just ask players to memorize it. So they're like, yes, aces are low, but they are worth 11 points, or they are worth 9 points. Twos are low, but they are worth 8 points. That's not a good solution at all. So he did it right. And I think it's very easy. And the cool thing is, when you play with standard cards, the ace is still high, which is natural. It's what people are used to. So if you remember that 9 is low and ace is high, then the rest of the order just kind of falls into place. The game can be puzzly. When all the information is still out on the table, or as cards are shown, it becomes a little puzzly. But the unknown information balances that out. And the cool thing is, because of the distribution of the cards during the deal, it is possible to run out of cards in your hand before you run out of cards in your strawman row, or vice versa. But it's much easier to run out of cards from your hand. And that's funny when that happens, because then your cards are literally all out on the table. Your opponent knows exactly what you have. And then what's worse is if you still have cards under that are face down, then you don't even know what you have. I mean, your opponent doesn't either, but it doesn't matter to them, because they know everything they need to know for that trick. Whereas you're sitting there praying for something good to get flipped up, but you're never going to know until the card on top has been played. So that is my top 10 trick-taking game list. In no certain order. If I had to guess at what would get bumped, I would say Pinocchio might be the first to go. And if I do it, if I change it out, it's going to be something else that has that bit of a gambling. Yeah, try not to run out of hand cards first. Exactly. And that's happened to me a couple times, and it's just like, well, nothing much I can do now. But Pinocchio will probably go first, but if I replace it, it'll be with something that has that bit of a gambling nature in the bidding, or it'll be something that has a little bit of chaos. But it'll definitely have to be a trick taker. Obviously, this is a trick taking list. So I don't really know. There is a game called Fildinsky, or Polish. I can't remember now. Fildinsky is one name for it. But that is actually, it's a 2-player game, like Pinocchio, but it's trick, and you have to build your melds with cards that you capture from the trick. And you have to build the melds as you go. And I can't remember if you can move cards around as you please, but once a meld's been set, you can't change it. So you might establish a meld early on in the game and then miss the opportunity for a better meld later, which is interesting. But Fildinsky, that's only 2-player. So Pinocchio rules, man. I don't know if it's going to get booted, but I could see it going first. German Whist is pretty solid just because of its simplicity. I think that keeps it here. Michael. Skull King, I don't see going anywhere because it scratches that itch that Oh Heck does. Cupid, maybe. If I develop Blind Don, no, Blind Don's not on the list, but that's a good one. That is a good one, and that uses kind of a similar strawman situation where you got cards out on the table. I have a video for that. If anyone's interested in checking out what Blind Don is in action, you can see it on my channel. I think I did that for St. Patrick's Day, actually, because it's popular in Ireland. Cupid, I think, stands a chance of getting booted by a game that does what it does better, for sure. Gudetama, same thing. I have put it on the list out of spite, but I actually really do like the game. I just wish this theme was different. So, Bid Euchre, that, honestly, I mean, euchre, like I've said it many times before, euchre's like kind of like breathing here in Ohio, or at least it used to be. But I could see it. It's lost its luster for me. There are lots of games out there to learn, and I think euchre might get booted. Suica might be a flavor of the week for me. It's been sticking around long enough though. Trogu, if I learn some other tarot games that I think are better, which I think is going to be tough to do because I know the nature of a lot of tarot games is it's not short and sweet like Trogu is. Rook, possibly. I mean, it's just unique enough. I think it needs to be on here. And of course, Vidrasso is going to be hard to knock off the list. So, there you go. BSN enjoyed Blind Don. It's a good one. There's another one. There's a bridge game. I can't remember what it's called. But there's a bridge game that's similar where there's all of your cards are laid out on the table in different columns that are of different sizes. And then cards are revealed as the top card is played. That one's pretty interesting. I'll look that one up. I'll try to remember what that one's called and get it to you. But that's my list in a nutshell, guys. Thanks for joining. Lots coming down the pipe this week. Lots. We're playing live tomorrow. I did know what I was going to play tomorrow. Yes, doing his decimals is in the house. Hey, thanks for joining. Yeah, Vidrasso is awesome. Let me know what you think of it. And What do we got? Live play tomorrow. I can't remember what I decided we were going to play live. I know it's... I think I'm going to do a whist. Minnesota whist, I think, is what I was leaning towards. I'm going to use a Copper Cod app, which can be played online on the computer. And I think I'm going to play some Minnesota whist just to kind of give whist a little more camera time. How to play... What was I going to do this week? Oh, boy. I know how to play Fox in the Forest is coming. I have 3 videos for that particular game planned. I am very excited for what's to come. I don't want to say how I feel about the game because that's one of the videos that's coming. But, all right, someone else in the chat. Awesome. Minnesota Whist. Yeah, I think it's going to be one of my more favorite ways to play whist. Oh, it must. And then, so yeah, Fox the Forest stuff coming. I want to teach another classic card game. I can't remember what I had planned. But I got to get going on a lot of different videos. Risk Deep Space, which is a Target exclusive, I really want to cover. Dewey asks what time. It's tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So same time. And that's, as far as it goes, that is my schedule for the channel. Mondays, Shoot the Moon, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesdays, live Let's Play, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm trying, usually I end at 11 or before. This one a little longer, but I don't mind. It's nice having all this banter in the chat. Oh, we got Quick's Bonus Sheet B coming from BSN. And he's got tons of games. As the title suggests, he really specializes in the games that you've probably never heard of. He likes to go through Pagat's new games. I can't remember what they're called, but the list of games that people submit. And he likes to find the ones that are good and worth your time. So yeah, lots more coming down. I hope to see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to play some Minnesota Whist. And if there's time after a game or two of that, a random choice bonus game. I don't even know what that'll be yet. So we'll decide in the moment. And I think that's kind of fun. Or it can blow up in my face. Who knows? Thanks, everybody. Love the chatter in the chat room or on the side here. That's made it a lot of fun. As always, keep on playing. I'll talk to you next time. Mm-hmm.